Should new roles for some classes be added to Classic Plus? Check all that you like to see. No. Huh? Tank Pal. I tanked all of Classic as a Paladin. All right, Corpo, we mean business today, guys. And we're doing the last part of this Classic Plus survey. Again, this is a community survey. This is not an official Blizzard survey. This is something that Jordy made. There's a lot of crazy stuff in this survey, and I think that's kind of the point of it, just to be completely off the wall and ask all kinds of ridiculous questions. And more than anything, this entire thing so far, we've done a few videos of this. This entire thing has been a good lightning rod for discussion. It's been a good catalyst for discussion. And we are gonna touch on the last portion of this survey today. We already talked systems, but we're gonna talk about the player survey. So let's go into it. Let's talk about the player survey. By the way, I just wanna say this. I want so badly to have a dark portal right there. Would that not be the most amazing thing in the world if there was a dark portal right there? I think about it every day. Fix Danny. Danny's legs broke. He didn't pay me my money. Okay, anyway, let's get to this. Player survey, classes and talents survey. How would you rate the class balance in Vanilla WoW? I think the class balance in Vanilla WoW is way better than people give it credit for, but I'm talking about in the entire scope of the game. I think in PvE it's pretty bad. I think in PvP it's pretty good. A lot of people say there's like a lot of negativity about the class balance. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is, because the PvP balance is pretty good. You fill in a lot of gaps with like the different professions and different consumable items and stuff that you can get in PvP to really make up for that. So with that being said, in PvE, it's like a 2 or a 3. It's pretty bad at the highest level, like at the min-max highest level. In PvP, this is why this is like a loaded question. There's a lot of questions like this. In PvP, I would say it's about like an 8. It's really not that bad. So with that being said, I'll give it like a 5. I might give it a 6 actually, because I might, like in PvP, it's really not that bad. Yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? I would say it's like a 5 or a 6. I think it's like a 5.5. Do you think any balancing needs to happen? I don't think there should be true balance, because the fact of the matter is this: balance is boring. Okay? And I'm not talking about druids, sorry. There needs to be some normalization, but perfect balance is boring. I think one of the best parts about like, whenever every class has something that's like kind of BS is usually whenever things are the most fun. Everybody has something that's kind of BS, but like having this perfect balance is just really boring. Classes can have different damage profiles, but they all need important utilities, so they bring them. This is kind of the design principle around Burning Crusade. I'm not saying every raid brings everything, but for example, rep paladins in Burning Crusade, they increase the entire raid's damage. Balanced druids, they increase the entire raid's hit chance on a target. Arms warriors, arms is like the PvP warrior spec, but if you're an arms warrior, you increase physical damage on the target for everybody attacking the target. It's pretty good. So I think having something like that is good. Again, I want to reiterate, this exact thing that I'm talking about and these exact examples that I'm giving are why I think the starting point of the design discussion for a Classic Plus should be the Burning Crusade pre-patch. Burning Crusade pre-patch addresses and builds on a lot of the perceived issues of Classic WoW from a design perspective. The things they do for druids, the things they do for shamans, the things they do for paladins. I think a lot of this stuff does get addressed really, really well in Burning Crusade. So starting with that like 2.0 patch is pretty good. Now, I don't think you should have 41 point talents, but that doesn't mean I don't think that the 41 point talents maybe could or should even be in those talent trees. And I might make like some YouTube videos talking about this stuff, like some reimagined talent trees based around like 31 point talents, right? Like if you took Burning Crusade talents, kind of merge them with vanilla talents, and then put them down to 31 points. That'd just be like a fun discussion. So maybe I'll do some videos talking about that at some point, or do it on stream. Which of the following talent trees in your opinions need a major revamp? If we're talking about vanilla, I don't know if anything needs a major revamp. Would you guys consider a major revamp of a talent tree for any class from vanilla to Burning Crusade, just to gauge what you guys think is major? Because I'm trying to think of a good example, and maybe you guys can remind me. I don't think paladins have a major revamp. There's a couple things, like Reckoning gets completely reworked. I wouldn't call it a major revamp for paladins. The top of the tree doesn't really change, or like the lower level stuff doesn't really change. So I wouldn't call that a major revamp. It's just new stuff is added. Now, would it be a major revamp if we do what I talked about earlier, and you took those 41 point talents and kind of mashed them with the vanilla, made those trees condense down to 31? Maybe that is a major revamp. The problem with any survey, by the way, is it pigeonholes you into certain types of like black and white answers. There's way too much nuance in game design to be able to really direct a discussion through like check boxes, you know what I mean? I'm just gonna skip this one. Should new roles for some classes be added to Classic Plus? Check all that you like to see. No. Huh? Tank Pal. I tanked all of Classic as a Paladin in vanilla. That's already a thing. We had a Paladin tank in our raids. We had a Hark. Tanked is a strong word. No, by tanked, I mean I ran my raid into the ground. You know what? I think like a melee hunter isn't crazy. Like I think survival should be more, I think that's what it was. I think originally before the rework, survival was like a melee spec before the hunter rework. But it was like a really, really bad one. Should classes receive new or adjusted abilities to make their rotation more interesting as they did or tried to in Season Discovery? So again, this is such a loaded question because of what's the stopping point? Technically, I say yes because of definitely think there's stuff they could do. Like I think you could give Rep Paladin's Crusader Strike, right? I think you could give Prop Paladin the Taunt. I think you could give Enhancement Shaman's Dual Wielding, right? You could give them some of these things that they get later on. I think doing something to casters to kind of make their rotation a little bit nicer, because that really doesn't happen until Wrath. And this is kind of with like the Season of Discovery thing. Maybe you do something to where it's not spam Frostbolt. In fact, not even maybe. I think you should do something to where casters are not, like mages just don't just spam Frostbolt all the time. I think there's something that you should add to clean that up. Now in PvP, they're already insane. And that's the biggest problem I have with a lot of this balance stuff that they do. And Warlocks with Shadow Bolt, by the way. My biggest problem with, whenever I talk about Season of Discovery, did a lot of good stuff from a gameplay standpoint and a lot of bad stuff from a system standpoint. The entire thing was just Band-Aid fixes, which is the same thing they do in retail WoW and they did in WoW for years. So like history is repeating itself and it's like, okay, well, you're just gonna do less damage in PvP. Like you go into a battlegrounds, you just do less damage. Saved. It's like, yeah, but what if I'm in like world PvP? Also, it just doesn't even feel good, right? You have like one scope of damage and how hard you're hitting out in the world, and then you go into a battleground and you just do less damage. That's really dumb. But you have to find a way to balance everything in a way to where things get cleaned up. Again, I'm gonna say it again. The starting point of the design discussion of a Classic Plus, I think if you approach it with starting with Burning Crusade, pre-patch, and then you adjust from there, I do think it's very, very wise because it kind of works. I do think there's a little bit too much damage right now, and you might want to scale the damage down a little bit, and it would probably be good for PvP, but there is a little bit too much. If new abilities get added to classes, how should they be learned? I think some of the Season of Discovery rune stuff was incredible. Like the Divine Storm quest for Season of Discovery was crazy. That was dude, that night was magical. I remember like all the people in the Paladin discords trying to be like, what do we do? And oh my gosh, I feel so bad. What was the name of the guy that finally figured it out? Because we were going around the world trying to figure out what was his name? Somebody figured it out and it was amazing. And then we made a 40-man raid to get the Divine Storm quest. This is what the coolest part about Divine Storm was. We had to go do like level 30, like between level 30 and 40 stuff, and we were stuck at level 25. So we needed a massive raid of people. It was so cool. But here's the problem with the runes. It was cool the first time, and then it kind of got boring. I do want to give credit where credit is due. I think that the beginning of it was great. I think there's just different, you can have something that comes from a quest. I think most stuff should be through a trainer, but I don't even think a lot of stuff should be added. You can be creative with it. You don't want to bloat the game. How would you feel if the talent trees in Classic Plus were larger, meaning they went further down requirement? No, I feel very strongly that it should be 31 points, because that 31 point cap gives you a lot of different build variety. And it makes things really interesting because there's no one cookie cutter spec. That's one thing that people thought years and years ago that ended up being not the case today. There's no one cookie cutter spec for a class. There's different builds and different specs for different things that you want to do. Again, a core design principle, and I'm going to talk about this a lot. One of the core design principles of Classic WoW is that you don't play a spec, you play a class. And I think having too deep of a talent tree limits that. And we're seeing that in the Burning Crusade pre-patch with 41 point talents at level 60, because we only have a few extra talent points to spend elsewhere, and it's not really all that great. So if you were to condense those down into that 31, then it gives you a lot more build variety and lets you be a lot more creative and really tool your character to play your class in your way that you want to play it for the specific thing that it is that you want to do. Like if you play a hybrid, I'm always going to use these Paladin examples, but if I want to do like an AoE grinding build, it might be different than my raid single target tanking build, which might be different from my off tank AoE tanking build, which might be different from my Ret PvP build, which would be different from my Ret PvE build, which would be different from a different kind of like maybe like Holy Reckoning stuff in vanilla, or like just Reckoning which is like a protection ret hybrid in vanilla. Even in Burning Crusade, right? Some people do reckoning stuff. I do reckoning more now, but like there's still plenty of like deep ret, like Crusader Strike PvP builds too. It just depends on your comp. It depends on who you're playing against. It depends on what your team is, all that stuff, right? There's a lot of different factors, like the current meta, and that's what's cool. I think that is a very cool thing, and that's what makes, one of the things that makes the design of Classic WoW so great. You play the class, not the spec. See, don't change talent trees. I do think they should change the talent trees. I don't think that they should make them larger. So again, this is like another question that pigeonholes you into something. How would you feel if each talent tree had a capstone talent choice, meaning the bottom of the tree had 2 distinct talents, of which you could only pick one? I always ask myself, whenever I see some kind of like off the wall suggestion, like something that is completely out of left field, like why would this be bad? And why would this be good? So the reason why this could be good is like, oh, you have a really powerful talent, but you don't want them to have the access, like the option of having both talents. Maybe one is for PvP and one is for PvE, and they have to choose for that spec. Maybe one is for like a style of that spec. Two-handed Fury versus dual-wield Fury. That's like the pros, maybe, of why you would do that. But I think it's better designed to build that into the actual talent tree itself. The reason why I think it's bad is it ends up pigeonholing you into that illusion of choice. That illusion of choice that starts to hit. You end up taking the talents that are just going to be the best for whatever it is. And now it actually pigeonholes you into not being able to pick that thing at all. If you build those options into the talent tree itself, then maybe somebody could be creative with it and come up with like a fun, goofy build that is like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing because I was able to put these things together and I want to do, again, I'm going to use the two-handed Fury versus dual-wield Fury example. A lot of warriors go dual-wield Fury in Classic for PvE. You could go two-handed Fury, but it's not really good unless you're Horde, because Horde has Wind Fury Totem, and Wind Fury scales harder for two-handed. It depends on how they would implement it, but I don't think that this is a good idea. Should every class get a movement speed, talent, or ability? No. Should mass res be a spell? I feel like if they do this, it needs to only be in PvE, in raids or something. But like, man, this is like going down. See, again, this is like when we're talking about like design principles, like, because if you have like a big world PvP fight and somebody's just mass resing out of combat, it's crazy. I think there should be like a long cooldown mass res so that it's only usable in raids or something. And I'm leaning towards no. If they were to add it, I don't think they should, but if they were to add it, that should be the implementation. Should damage over time, heal over time spells be able to be crit baseline for all classes? No. What? Should each class in Classic have one? Because here, if you do this, then you have to rebalance the entire thing. Should each class in Classic have one spec tailored specifically for PvP? Because then you have to reduce the amount of damage they do and have it coincide with the type of gear that's available to you. Like, that's all part of the balance. So you end up having to rebalance the entire class and change the entire class. Should each class in Classic Plus have one spec tailored specifically for PvP? Hold on. There's certain specs that are better for PvP and they're optimal for PvP. But like, you play the class, not the spec. How'd you rate Vanilla WoW Protection Paladin's kit in terms of solo content? Pretty good. 5-man, like a 9. Actually, dude, solo, I would say like a 10, bro. 5-man, like an 8. Raid, like a 7. PvP, like a 4. PvP, like a 5. How'd you rate Vanilla WoW's Holy Paladin kit in terms of solo? 4. 5-man, 10, raid 10, PvP 10. How would you rate Vanilla WoW's Rec kit in terms of solo? 8, 5-man, raid like 5, PvP like 8. Should Consecration be a baseline ability? This could be something that is a baseline ability. Every spec uses it, and it's nice for Holy to have. I have no opinion on this. You could make it a baseline. How would you feel in addition to mana, Paladin had a secondary reason? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Should a Paladin's itemization need strength or just strength? Strength and spell power is so freaking cool. And I'm telling you, if they had the seal system, the seal mechanics work exactly like they do in TBC Anniversary right now, even if there was no Crusader Strike, stuff working like it does right, like mechanics working the way they do right now would be insanely good. It would be so, I'm telling you, I yearn, I've been thinking about it. It's in my head. I'm like, I yearn for a vanilla WoW, like actual vanilla. That is, if they were to have the seal mechanics work the way they are right now in TBC Anniversary, which is different than how it was in TBC 2021, which is different than how it is in Classic Era, which is different than how it was Classic 2019. It's different right now. If it worked this way with the same sort of like the spell power on your PvP gear, the spell power on your AQ40 gear, the spell power on your tier 2 gear. It would be insanely fun. Oh, it would be good. See, that's like whenever I'm saying like I have 2 tracks of thought, because like Reckoning, it was always broken in vanilla, it still is. So you have vanilla here and you have Classic Plus here. They're 2 separate things and they can coexist. Assuming Protection Paladin gets the support, it needs to be competitive. Should their itemization include spell power? Yes. That is a cool class fantasy that you have spell power. Yes. Duration to Paladin, greater blessings being classic. I mean, if they want to make it 30 minutes, it's fine. Should Holy Paladins get additional resources and power while in melee range with an enemy? I think the class fantasy of the Holy Paladin being like the frontliner, boom, you're doing damage, and like melee healer, like that's like a retail WoW thing. Now, that was how Paladins were originally intended to be designed in like the alpha, and they changed it. And I feel like that's a very retail WoW thing now. If you had like some kind of talent, if you changed a talent to be like, if you're in melee range, you get some kind of bonus, maybe it could be cool. But like, again, we're talking classic game design and classic philosophy. I would probably say no. Now, but again, I'm getting pissed at these freaking pigeonhole answers. It says, let me stay in the back with other healers. Each healer is different, okay? In PvP and PvE, I'm telling you, there's a guy. If you watch my old streams from years ago, he's the best Holy Paladin I ever played with. His name is Spoogie. And Spoogie was a badass. He was from Israel, lived in Sweden. We played on private servers together because in private servers, we played on global servers. And Spoogie, man, I remember Spoogie coming in here, Malistar's Defender. He had his tier 2 gear. And back then we had progressive itemization. So the tier 2, the Judgment set, was a set that gave plus healing. It was a healing set until the 1.9 patch, the AQ40 patch. But Spoogie would come in like front line, like, all right, I got this shit, bitches. And he'd run in there and he would just be like bombing big heals in his full plate armor, and people would be beating on him, and we'd be like, repentance, stun. And we'd be like peeling off of him, and we'd do the Paladin police force. Oh, dude, me, Drakova, Spoogie, and we'd go in like 3-man with Paladins, and we'd be beating like 5-man groups, and we'd be doing all this fighting in Blackrock Mountain. Insane. Dude, we had so much fun. Now, why do I even bring this up? Because I miss Spoogie. That's why I bring it up. But the other reason I bring it up is because all the different healers have different roles in different types of gameplay. So like, let me stay in the back with other healers. Well, you have a Resto Druid who's like running around, right? He's changing forms, he's shifting forms. He's casting like entangling roots, and he might be doing other stuff, you know, doing Druid stuff. A priest is gonna have like power infusion, right? If they're a disc priest, they have like power infusion. They might be a little bit more like, I'm a clothy, I gotta get in the back. A shaman, very similar to a paladin, frontliner. Frontliner, very aggressive, boom. Somebody's casting a spell, Earthshock. Hey, that guy has a blessing of protection on him. Let's spam purge, purge, purge. Help the melee out. Dropping totems, Wind Fury. You know, very similar to a Paladin. Paladin is like the battle, like, I'm a big tank. I'm coming in here. I got my plate armor. I got my shield. I'm taking a lot of melee damage. That's cool. That is cool design, right? There's no let me stay in the back with other healers. No, every class is a little bit different. But that's already built into the game. It already works that way. Should Classic Plus differentiate between long-term buffs, short-term cooldowns by changing names? No. What version of any of Steel Twisting has been classic? This is so much more nuanced than anything else, by the way. Like, this is way more, I mean, two-way twisting would be crazy. We have two-way twisting now with Righteousness and Command. We always had two-way twisting with Righteousness and Command in 2021 TBC, but we didn't have two-way twisting with Command and Blood. I talk about this in my Seal Twisting video. In this case, like, if everything two-way twisted, it would kind of be nuts, but it might be kind of broken. I don't really know. There's a lot more nuance to this question than what this is allowing. Should Blizzard support a shotgun playstyle? They already do that. Like, that's already a thing. I should turn undead exorcism work on all enemy types? No way. That would be broken. It's just we just do too much damage. With exorcism, you do too much DPS in raids, and turn undead, I think, is just like, what, you're gonna give them a fear for undead players. I think is just, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it just makes paladins too strong. Turn undead actually did work for players, I think, in the alpha. I don't remember if it was at the very beginning of the game. Okay. Rank the following professions by how much you enjoy them. Engineering is super fun. Then first aid is cool. I just pick the most boring. Gathering professions is mining. You fight somebody over a mining node, I guess. Blacksmithing is okay. You have the fear trinket. Arcanite Reaper. Arcanite Reaper sucks in Classic the way with no progressive itemization, Arcanite Reaper is not very good. And also with like the way that stuff is released, no progressive itemization, and having everything on the last patch makes Arcanite Reaper not nearly as good for how much it costs. Many of the ingredients required for crafting are too hard to find. Some of them are. I'm gonna use the Arcanite Reaper as an example. So look at Arcanite Reaper, 20 Arcanite bars. 20 Arcanite bars. So you need 20 arcane crystals and transmute them with thorium to get an Arcanite bar. That's really, really, really expensive for something that is not really that good. Now, it was really good back in the day. At level 58, getting an Arcanite Reaper, this thing would crank, and it's a sick looking weapon. In fact, this is one of the highest DPS blue weapons. It's so easy to get the other gear now, and also you have the strongest version of all the other gear without progressive itemization. The solution to this would be if they were to actually rework some of the recipes for some of the gear and the crafting to match the current state of the game. You account for the times of how the player base plays and what's available to them and how much of a certain material is out and about, because the economy of a server, the economy of the game is all supply and demand. Things that are very rare are more expensive and things that are not very rare are very cheap. And Arcanite crystals are pretty rare. So if you want to not affect the rarity and not affect the cost of something like an Arcanite bar, maybe it would be wise for an Arcanite Reaper to not take 20 Arcanite bars and instead maybe take something like, I don't know, 10 Arcanite bars or even less. I think even 10 Arcanite bars would be super expensive. Like if they made it like 5 Arcanite bars, that might be a little bit better even. You would finally see people using it more. You're looking at like somewhere in the 150 gold range. How much would enchanted leather go for? I can't remember. But like if Arcanite Reaper cost you like 150 to 200 gold, I think that's a lot more reasonable than the 500, 600 gold that it would cost. Should professions be rebalanced to give more value to diverse profession choices? Having more cool things for the other professions would be a good idea. That's one of the problems right now in Classic WoW is not all the professions have cool things that you get from them. Should profession quests require that you learn the profession to complete or allow you to purchase the items from someone with that profession instead? I think you shouldn't even be able to get a profession quest if you don't have that profession to begin with. You should have to have that profession in order to be able to accept the quest in the first place. However, to turn in that quest, like if the quest is like, give me a bronze tube, you shouldn't have to be the one that crafts the bronze tube. Now, maybe there's some part of it that you have to craft on your own or do something, but I think that it's good to give the players that agency to be able to purchase something that another crafter made, that communication, that social interaction occurs. That's good for an MMO. Or you can craft it on your own. You have the agency, you have the opportunity to do whatever you want to do. Yeah, you should absolutely be allowed to purchase it. Should Black Lotus be more accessible? If you add more spawns, there'll just be more bots. I think the bottom line for everything is to fix the bot problem. That's the bottom line. Fix the bots. The bots will win no matter what, yeah. Which of these new races would you want to see in Classic Plus? Blood Elves and Draenei, maybe. Can I say something? Like, I know some people might not agree with me. I never liked the idea of goblins as a playable race. I just didn't. It felt a little bit weird to me because you see them in the Steam Weedle Cartel and all this other stuff for so long. It just felt a little bit odd. Okay, that's all. That's all I have to say. I don't have a huge problem with them. You know, I'm cool with the goblins. You know, like you guys do you, and you know, I support it. But personally, for me, I just thought it was a little weird. A little weird. You know, Coltiran, dude. I want to make a Coltiran Paladin in retail so bad. I don't know. I just think Big Man Paladin is just funny. I think something that could be interesting, I think High Elves and Blood Elves, having both of them is too confusing. In a world where you don't have Draenei, in a world where you don't have Blood Elves, High Elves would be part of the Alliance still. But then you would have to give the Horde something cool, and I don't know what you would give them. Ogres? Actually, Ogres kind of does make sense for the Horde. Because wasn't in like Warcraft 2, couldn't you have Ogre NPCs when you played an Orc? Rexar. Wait, what? Is Rexar like half Ogre? I wrote Rexus instead of Rexar like Texas. He is half Ogre. I actually didn't know that. I actually didn't know he was half Ogre. Interesting. If you did High Elves for the Alliance and Ogres for the Horde, that would make sense. Blood Elves and Draenei. But I don't think you can have Blood Elves and High Elves. Now think about how he was made. Well, they programmed him. Out of 10, how much do you like the current racial trait system in Classic WoW? It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. I think it's a good system, but it's not balanced. You know, like Goblin Organ? No, not really. How would you feel about rebalancing racial abilities? Remove combat racials? No. Allow you to change your racials to whatever combination you want? No, because then why even have them? Balance them for all races, but don't change the soul system. I don't even think it needs like a hard balance. I think some things need to be addressed. Like weapon skill is way too powerful. In vanilla WoW, weapon skill is way too powerful. In Burning Crusade, they changed the weapon skill racials to give you expertise. Again, very strong. Expertise is a great stat. More valuable for some classes than others. but that's how all racials work. So I do think like some kind of like an adjustment or a tweaking of the racials to kind of account for the times and seeing what makes something work would be a good idea. But I don't think there should be like a hard rebalance that I can think of. Depends on what you consider to be a hard rebalance. Because you could say changing the weapon skill racials is a hard rebalance. There's so much subjectivity to this entire thing, man. There's so much subjectivity to this entire survey that it really is just like a fun thing to let us talk about. How would you feel about cross-faction play in Classic? No. Should gear mounts be faction specific? Yeah. With this being said, having certain mounts be available to the different factions that might look like another faction's mounts is cool. Like the Baron mount, if you're an Alliance player and you can get a Baron mount from Strath Undead, super sick. It's like the coolest thing in the world. If you get like a ZG Tiger as a Horde player, that's the only way to get a Tiger. Like those things are very, very cool. So I feel like, yeah, these things should be faction specific for when you buy them from a vendor or whatever. But maybe if there's like a drop in the world that looks like an Undead mount, looks like a Tiger mount, maybe a Kodo, I don't know. Right? I have no idea. Actually, you can get a Hawkstrider. In Magic Terrace, isn't there a Hawkstrider you can get, I think? Am I making that up? I thought you could. Anyway, stuff like that is cool. Should certain content like quests or dungeons be exclusive to particular factions and races? Sure. That's like, we're talking about like epic quests of like faction, like class quests and stuff like that. Should the regular auction house be cross-faction? No. Okay, we're done. After that, it is done. Cinema. We finally did our final Classic Plus survey. I want to mention this. This, again, is not an official survey. This has nothing to do with Blizzard. This is more of a fun community thing just to get people talking and just to get discussion out there to frustrate people, okay? That is the only reason this exists. This is not something that Blizzard will do or see or whatever, but what Blizzard does see is, I know for a fact, I've been told, Blizzard does, and there's a lot of devs for a lot of games, they do read the comments on YouTube videos, they do look at stuff. So like, if you guys have feedback and if you guys wanna have a discussion, you guys wanna talk about this stuff, leave comment. If you guys wanna say something positive about this, if you guys feel a certain type of way, just, you know, that there's a lot of ways that you could support the community as a whole. You know, say something nice, say something not nice, right? Leave a comment, let us know what you think. Like the videos, okay? Like the videos. There's so much to be said. There's so much to be said. There's so much to talk about. And if people really enjoy this stuff, maybe I will go through and kind of come up with my own like version of like how I would redo talents and stuff like that. I mentioned that a little bit earlier going through this, but it seemed like people really were positive to that idea. People would really like to see something like that. It would just be like a fun thing, again, just to talk about. So thank you guys for watching the YouTube video. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, all those things. Follow my Instagram, EsfandTV. Follow my Twitch, EsfandTV. Watch my streams here. Watch my streams on Kick, on YouTube, everywhere. Everything is EsfandTV. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys later.